Are claims evidence? That's a much more nuanced question than you might think, but when it comes to religion, claims are pretty much all they have. It's one of the reasons that we don't just take them at their word or take them seriously. We need more than claims to find objective reality, and sadly, they're just not interested. So we're going to look at that today, and away we go. This is going to be a very large video from a channel called the Carpenter's Desk, because this is, let's be honest, a complete mess. This is one of the worst things I've seen in a very long time. It's a lot of the problems with the religious mindset all in one place, and we're going to go out and explore them one by one. Strap in, because this is going to be a long one, part 1 of 2, I figure. Can this guy actually prove that claims are evidence? Don't get your hopes up, because I figure this is going to go sideways pretty quickly.
Claims are not evidence. You may have heard this internet slogan often raised by YouTube skeptics like Pologia Matt Dillahunty and so on. In fact, Pologia uses the "For the Bible Says So" jingle quite effectively in his videos.
True, I mean, it has been adopted by other YouTubers, so there you go. However, I'm not really here to talk about Matt Dillahunty or Pologia. There's a lot more here that needs to be unpacked, and that's why this is going to be a multi-part video. I'm not going to respond directly to things that are aimed at other YouTubers, at least not on purpose. I'm going to provide my own take on it and hope that's okay. Therefore, let's get back to the video and see where this goes.
And the attempt here is, of course, to nullify or downplay the value of the Gospels or the Bible as a whole as reliable eyewitness testimony,
which has never been demonstrated to be true. That's kind of the problem. The religious believe that it's reliable, but going from demonstrable fact and not faith, it just doesn't hold up at all. It doesn't matter what you want to believe. It matters only what you can demonstrate is actually so. And this comes up time and time again in religious videos, right? They pretend that, well, the Bible tells you so, therefore it's got to be true because you really want it to be true. But that's not how it works, is it? Especially when you talk to people who don't share your blind faith. Faith is meaningless. Only facts matter. Come back when you have some of those. It really can't be that hard.
Well, just think about it. Firstly, saying claims are not evidence is also a claim.
All right, first off, that is not how this works. A claim is not evidence in and of itself. It might contain evidence, it might reference evidence, but that doesn't make the claim itself meaningful. If I were to make a claim, I don't know, maybe that Bigfoot is real, does that make Bigfoot real? Or does it only become a valid claim when I can present evidence that I have the slightest clue what the hell I'm talking about? All the faith in the world, all the confidence that Bigfoot is out there someplace, running around in the woods, that doesn't equate to evidence. Wishful thinking and evidence are two entirely different things. Claims need justification to be valid, and sadly for the religious, there just isn't any for the claims that they make about their gods.
And secondly, and more importantly, claims are evidence, at least most of the time.
No, they're not. They're just not. In and of themselves, claims are nothing. It doesn't matter how many times you repeat it. It doesn't get any closer to the truth if you haven't presented any way to show that it's actually true. Now, I suppose it depends on how you're using the word evidence. If it's no more than, well, it sounds good to me, then maybe you might have a point, but nobody that I know uses evidence that way. If we're going to go to a dictionary definition, one that we've used many times before, evidence is the available body of facts or information indicating whether a belief or proposition is true or valid. It isn't what you believe, it isn't what you like, it isn't what you have faith in, it's something that can be shown based on evidence or information, the facts of the matter, to be factually correct in the real world that we all share. This is another instance of the religious playing musical definitions, going with whatever sounds good in the moment and gets them where they want to go. It is inherently dishonest. Knock it off.
A vast majority of our beliefs, even those pertaining to scientific knowledge, are held based on claims.
No, they're not. Now, I can imagine what he's going to say next. Oh, but you're just listening to experts. You don't actually know this for yourself. Yeah, except you can. It is possible to validate every single one of these claims independently on your own. It's not the fact that someone famous or well-educated said so. It's that their words can be backed up with demonstrable fact. Science isn't based on what scientists say. Scientists say things because they've done the work to back it up first. What a scientist says is irrelevant if they don't have the evidence behind them. That is not something that you can do with religion, though. All you can do is say, well, trust me, I know what I'm talking about. No, sorry, I don't believe you. Come back with evidence to prove that you actually have a clue. We'll never see that from these people because they have nothing. This is just a ridiculous word game. And not too long ago, I saw a video where somebody was pointing out that William Lane Craig is, in fact, a con man. He is. That's all he's doing. He has no facts to back up anything that he says. All he says is, well, the Holy Spirit tells me so. Great. How do you know that? Because that's the question that destroys every single apologist on the planet. Don't tell me what you believe, tell me what you know, and then tell me how you know it. And none of them can do it if you notice. It's kind of sad.
If you believe in the Big Bang cosmology, it is not necessarily because you have investigated and understood the data yourself, unless of course you have studied the subject, but because you have accepted the claims of a vast majority of individuals who are experts in the field.
See? Told you so. The point is, you don't have to trust the experts. You can go and verify it on your own. You can get the degrees, same ones they do. You can run the experiments, the same ones they did. Whatever it takes, you can verify their words. The fact that you probably won't doesn't change the fact that you can. Can matters. With religion, there is no experiment to run. There are no facts to verify. The only thing you have is, but I really want to believe. There is nothing that the supposed experts can point to and say, well, here's how I know that. Because they don't know anything. They just believe. They just have faith. There are no facts. There is no verification. There's only faith and fifis, and that is not enough to get you to demonstrable truth. Remember, that's what evidence is. It's a way to get to demonstrable truth. I don't care what you believe. You don't get to play with double standards.
That everything in the universe was once crunched into something smaller than an atom.
But you don't know that.
Well,
you're just believing
but
Stephen
not-
Hawking, and that's a matter of faith in his abilities.
yes.
You don't know it yourself. You're accepting that because someone told you.
I'm not. I've actually got multiple degrees. You can go out and look at the raw data if you'd like. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of scientists out there, people who have the relevant degrees and who have performed the relevant surveys and who have done the experiments to prove that these things are true. That's actually how science works: repeated experimentation and verification. It doesn't matter what they say. It matters what evidence they can trot out to prove it. That's a basic part of the scientific framework, that scientists go out and verify each other's work. Now, I've seen the religious pretending, well, it's all a giant conspiracy, which is just freaking stupid, because you get a whole lot farther in science by proving the other guy wrong than you do by proving them right. Scientists are trying to falsify the experimental data. It's part of their job. But on the religious side, what are the theists doing? What experiment has, say, William Lane Craig ever done? What data sets can Frank Turek produce? None at all. They don't even try. They just tell you what they think, based on nothing but their thinking, but their faith. And that's dumb. Science tells you what it has proven. Religion tells you what they think will get you to give them their money. There's a massive difference between the two.
Whether a claim constitutes as evidence depends primarily on who is making the claim.
No, it absolutely does not. It depends on the supporting evidence behind the claim. It depends on what the claimant can produce to back up their claim. And it can't just be, well, I say so, or, well, I read it in a book. It has to be something that can be demonstrated, that can be supported, that can be repeated. The fact that this guy doesn't understand that, that's pretty telling, right?
Take an everyday example. I come home and ask my brother, where is my dad? And he says that he's gone to the supermarket. I buy that claim as evidence for the proposition that dad has indeed gone to the supermarket. Why? Because it is my brother who's making the claim, and of course he was here when dad left home a while ago.
That has not been established. Now, granted, I am getting pretty picky here, but going solely by what he said, he hasn't established any of those facts. Nowhere did his brother, at least in his story, say that he was there when his father left. That's just an assumption on this guy's part. Now, maybe his father left a note saying he went to the store, and that is evidence that could be presented, although it's only evidence of intent, not of actuality. Maybe the father intended to go to the store and just got sidetracked. You don't know that, neither does he. Also, who says that the brother is trustworthy? Maybe the father got kidnapped and he's being held for ransom, and the brother is just trying to put the authorities off his trail. And one thing that we can absolutely point to here, something the religious can't do, we can show that the father is real. That's something the religious can't do with their imaginary friends. Heck, we can't even assume the continued existence of the father. I mean, he was there once. This guy and his brother exist, so obviously he had to exist at one time. But maybe he died 20 years ago. They've just been saying that he's at the store for 20 years to cover their grief. Maybe Dad went out for cigarettes 20 years ago and he just never came home again. We just don't know. We do have the ability to check, though. We can go to the store and see if he's there. We can follow the route that he's most likely to have taken and see if he's on it. Tell us how we can do the same thing with any god. Because I bet you can't come up with anything, can you?
You see, again, it is a matter of who is making the claim. But well, you could say that it is not just who is making the claim, but also what the claim is about.
That is a fair point. We have evidence that fathers go to stores. We know that fathers are real, and we know that stores are real. Barring anything else fishy going on, it is a reasonably mundane claim to make. Gods, however, they have never, ever, ever, not even once been shown to exist. Gods have no direct, demonstrable, testable evidence for their side. Just because you really like the idea, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't get you to testable fact, and that's what you need. So I don't think this is going to go as well as he thinks, do you?
The claim that Jesus performed miracles and rose from the dead are not of the same kind as the claim that my dad has gone to the supermarket.
That is true. Claims about Jesus bear a much higher burden of proof because Jesus cannot be shown to have ever been real. You cannot provide any evidence that any of those events ever actually happened. And it would be the same thing to say, well, Harry Potter went to Hogwarts and he uses a wand to do magic. None of those things can be justified. Until validated with some kind of independent evidence, they are just empty claims. Just because you read it in a book, that doesn't make it true. Therefore, he's kind of in the ballpark, but I don't think he knows where he's stumbling around. Let's see.
So here these skeptics will qualify the initial claim that claims are not evidence with an additional claim that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
And that is true. Claims about Bigfoot, which has not been validated to exist, require more than, well, I heard a noise in the woods. That doesn't prove Bigfoot. Well, I really like the idea of God. That doesn't prove that any gods exist. These are things for which we have absolutely no demonstrable evidence, and whether you like it or not, that's what we need. This is where I think he's really going to go wrong.
Well, no. Claims are claims, and they just require adequate evidence to be either held or discarded.
And your claims don't warrant the beliefs being held. He says that claims require adequate evidence, which shows that he at least understands that part of it, but he doesn't understand that his own claims don't have any evidence at all, adequate or not. Now, of course, he hasn't made any specific religious claims in this video, so I might be jumping the gun, but this is just another appeal to double standards, where the claims of one side are good and the claims of another side are bad, based entirely on his emotional reaction to them. And I'm sorry, but that's just not how that works.
Also, what do you really mean by the term extraordinary? The proposition, for example, that the earth is not actually flat must have sounded as extraordinary to people a few thousands of years ago.
That's true. They were wrong. Because here's the thing, it doesn't matter how a thing sounds. It matters only if it's actually true. Some people are still convinced today that the earth is flat. They're just idiots. Some people think this is all just a dream. They just have no evidence to back it up. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't all be a dream. There's really no way to beat heart solipsism, but the time to accept a claim, any claim, is when there is evidence to examine, and not before. And the religious, they run into some problems there, don't they? What you want to be true doesn't matter. What is true does, and the only way to figure out what is true is to look at the evidence for it. Until you can separate the two, what you want to be true and what actually is true, you've got some issues. This guy might want to think about that.
Or that the earth is moving around the sun and it is not the other way around. Or that the universe, comprising of space, time and matter, began to exist at the Big Bang.
All of which we have evidence for. It doesn't rely on, I really want to believe. There's an entirely different class of claims being made here between religion and science. What you want is irrelevant. What is demonstrable is not. Come back when you've got something to present, because until then, you have absolutely nothing. Faith is not a reasonable, rational, or credible path to demonstrable truth. It's not that hard to understand. Figure it out.
Time began to exist, that's an extraordinary claim.
Not really, because we have evidence for it. Now, before we had evidence for it, yes, it would have been an extraordinary claim that would have required extraordinary evidence to believe. But we've got that now. Now, compare that to, say, the belief in gods. We still have zero evidence or experience, demonstrable experience, with any gods, goddesses, whatever. That's something that still requires that extraordinary evidence. And we don't have any. So that's a very poor analogy.
Well, one may say so, and science is filled with such extraordinary and sometimes even ridiculous claims that are actually true.
Then they're not ridiculous, are they? They are supported by evidence. Independent, verifiable evidence. You haven't gotten anywhere remotely close to that with a god, have you? That's why you're having so many problems. And let's be honest, why so many religious people are desperately trying to blur the line. They want to be on the same level as science. They're just not. They want to be as credible as scientific discoveries. They're just not. We can point out everywhere that they're going wrong, and the religious, sadly, they can't point out anywhere that they're actually going right. They clearly don't understand the difference, and let's be honest, they don't want to. They are terrified to admit that they are on the wrong side of logic, reason, evidence, and credibility. That's kind of sad, isn't it?
Such claims are then translated to a hypothesis, validated or rejected with respect to the data that it seeks to explain and the background evidence. So all you need to prove the claim is merely adequate evidence.
Yes, your side doesn't have any. That's the point. I don't know why this video goes on for another 10 minutes when he's already admitted that he knows the problem. The problem is, religion has nothing at all to present. If they had evidence, then they wouldn't need faith. They could just present the evidence. Instead, all they can do is make claims. Unjustified claims, claims made without any evidentiary support at all, and pretend that, well, because they want it to be, it's just as good. But it's not. It's pointless. Why can't he figure that out?
And in the context of the study of history, claims when they are evaluated and put together do constitute a form of evidence called testimonial evidence,
which is the least reliable evidence known to man. But here's the thing. That assumes that the things in the Bible are actually testimony. It assumes that they are intended as history. And that's something you haven't supported yet. Just because you really wish it was true, that doesn't mean that it is. Because here's the thing. I'm sure this guy doesn't accept what it says in the Quran as testimonial evidence, does he? Quran 54, 1 through 2 says that the moon was split in half. So why is that any different than what it says in the Bible? Why does your book get special consideration and other people's books do not? Again, we're right back to the religious double standard. Good for me, but not for thee. Except that doesn't fly, and anybody with an honest bone in their body ought to see the problems and understand what's wrong. It's really kind of sad that the religious have so many problems with that, right?
These are the kind of evidence that are used in the study of history and also even in modern courts of law.
Yeah, except we're not talking about history, we're talking about reality. This is where we can look at another source, the Homeric epics. They talk, at least in part, about the Trojan War, and nobody in their right mind ever thought that the Trojan War ever happened. At least not until we found corroboratory evidence in the form of archaeological digs. Then we took the story at least partially seriously, at least the parts that could be independently verified, because we'd shown that it actually happened in reality. We didn't believe Homer, we believed evidence. Even though we know that the Trojan War happened now, we still don't accept all the tall tales of gods and goddesses that Homer wrote about alongside his tale. Why? because those parts aren't supported. That's really the problem here. The religious are happy to run around with the goalpost saying, well, this is all history. Yeah, okay, fine. Then they desperately try to say, now it's all real. No, sorry. There's a much stronger burden of proof for reality than for stories that may or may not ever have happened. Yet they really don't want to deal with that, do they? Wonder why.
A few months ago, we had the cold case detective J. Warner Wallace on our show, Conversations at the Desk, where we discussed about his most recent book, Person of Interest. I will leave a link to that conversation in the description box. Now, Wallace is a celebrated homicide detective in the US, having investigated several high-profile cold cases.
And we've taken Wallace apart many, many times around here. He's not impressive. If his religious acumen is anything like his law enforcement version, I have no idea how he even finds his shoes in the morning. Wallace, like just about every other religious apologist, starts with a conclusion that he likes, and then he goes looking for evidence to support it. Never mind all the stuff that proves it's all bunk, he's just got a one-way ticket on his train to confirmation biasville, and that's about all he's got. So, if you think Wallace gets you anywhere, you are sadly mistaken. He is a ludicrous joke.
In fact, he is the most featured detective on NBC's Dateline. A former atheist, he has often spoken about his conversion and how applying the rules of testimonial evidence to the Gospels convinced him of their authenticity.
Well, that's his story at least. Too bad it doesn't stand up to any kind of rational scrutiny. And that's kind of the problem. There are plenty of supposed former atheists turned religious wingnuts out there who make all kinds of claims, but it's really hard to take any of it seriously. When you look at his supposed conversion story and say, well, what about this? And he has no credible answers, you know that it's all just a lie. He is not remotely concerned about the truth. If he had anything at all to do with actual evidence, well, he wouldn't be so ridiculously easy to poke holes in, would he? Because we've heard his story before. Look at Lee Strobel. He tried to pull the same thing. His story doesn't stand up any better than Wallace's, and Strobel's wife was the cause of his conversion because he didn't want to get a divorce. This is not at all impressive. It's actually kind of sad.
His latest book was the basis for our conversation, where he makes a robust case for Jesus without the New Testament, much like as he describes investigating a no-body homicide, a case of murder where the victim's body itself is missing.
And he does so by just blindly buying into the crap in the Bible. This was also the problem with Strobel. He talked to biblical experts and only the supposed experts that he liked, and then just accepted everything they said without question. Sorry, but for an investigative journalist, that is sheer incompetence. None of these people want to find out the truth. They just want to get to the apologetic money train so they can just con the rubes and make a bundle. J. Warner Wallace's current net worth is about $5 million. He sure wasn't making that as a cold case detective, was he? It's all about the greenbacks. Let's not kid ourselves. Anyway, that's about where I'm going to stop for the day. I figure that this is going to be pretty long, at least an hour, who knows. And that's just in response to a 13-minute video, which is why I'm going to cut it up the way that it is. People stop watching videos after about 25 or 30 minutes. So, what do you think so far? I, for one, am not remotely impressed, but I think you figured that one out already. This is what happens when you try to get somewhere that you were already emotionally predisposed to reach, rather than wanting the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, regardless of how it makes you feel. I keep bringing this up, and every theist I talk to, every single one, they all deny it. Yet it's very clear that's what's going on. But I don't want that. So what? Truth doesn't care about your fees. It's why we just don't get anywhere with the terminally deluded. I only care about the truth. If it makes me feel terrible to know the truth, at least I got the truth. I don't care about my feelings, and you shouldn't either. So anyway, next time we're going to pick up right there at 4 minutes and 27 seconds in the video, for anybody who's curious, and probably in the middle of his discussion about J. Warner Wallace. I guess we'll have to see. So until next time, stay sane and stay rational. Somebody has to, and we all know it's not going to be the religious.